Now, probably well, no, not probably. My first love in life is history. Been the history of people. First, it was anthropology, the history of how man became man. Um, you know, Homo erectus, Homo habilis, going through that. And when I was little, watching documentaries on the Leakeys, I don't think they're still alive. He got his legs severed in a plane crash. I even think his father was working. um, Learning about Oljavite Gorge and all that. I still can't pronounce that. Um, Watching the 8-Man series that Walter Cronkite did, and then going on to history. And really being amazed at history. And I don't see how anybody else isn't amazed by history. 2,000 years ago, you had the Roman Empire. This great empire. And then you have this horrid time that comes in beginning in the early 5th century and lasting for almost 1,000 years. And so much of Rome was lost that it was retained in books basically, but the function of a state running like that doesn't really come about until some might say never, some might say 19th century. So when I see things like this, a Watchtower publication, which is from an American cult known as the Jehovah's Witness, spread pretty much throughout the world now, who looks at the codicy of the New Testament, the codex of the New Testament, the canon of the New Testament, and looks at it as one piece of writing from the 1st century, when these things were written throughout the 1st century. Possibly one of the Catholic epistles being written in the 2nd century. These were formulated in the reason why all these came together and how they came together, starting with the Gospels, the 4 Gospels in the mid to late 2nd century, which is incredibly early when you look at it, and the Pauline corpus getting collected. You have not really a final agreement even in 367. It still takes the 4th and 5th centuries, well, 4th, 6th and 7th centuries in some cases, to get this down, and it's still not universal, not even to this day. The Eastern Orthodox Church won't read the Apocalypse of John in their churches. The Armenian Orthodox have Paul's 3rd letter to the Corinthians. And there are groups like this because America was founded with basically King James Bible in hand, some works of Shakespeare, and that's basically it. And that ignorance still permeates to today, to the point where we can have a woman, an older woman, almost elderly, call herself a scholar, say that she's an atheist, and give what sounds like a 3rd grade essay, and to not even know how much she doesn't even know. Acting as if Augustine of Hippo, Origen, Tertullian, Clement of Alexandria, Irenaeus of Lyon, Cyprian of Carthage, Gregory of Nyssa, Athanasius of Alexandria, Nicholas of Smyrna, that there wasn't a huge paper trail going from before the last writings of the New Testament were written, basically all the way up to modern day. One of the most extensive paper trails, but because of things like the Protestant Reformation and the way America developed and the fundamentalism that grew up in America because of its ignorance, it's been the shielding of eyes, and nobody really, it's almost taboo to talk about because it would destroy most of American Christianity. It really would. And they put up such blinders that when somebody like me comes around, you're like, well, first and foremost, I care about history. And that's wrong. It's immediately juxtaposed as they're an atheist, so they're skeptical and unbiased, which that we can dismiss, right? I mean, does anybody buy that? And that I must be the one putting my faith in things, in history-wise, if this took place. No. To not even, the woman doesn't even know how the Roman Empire functioned. She talks about tolerance of other religions. Basically, if I start an empire, the empire of North America, and I say, my God is Jesus Christ, and everybody else's God is Jesus Christ too. We all have the same God. And I go into, I conquer the Arabian Peninsula, and I destroy the Kaaba, and build a huge cathedral there, and put up a bunch of crucifixes. My God is your God. Is that being tolerant? Rome destroyed and enslaved a lot of cultures. And it was might makes right. Now they had soothsayers and all these, you know, different cults, and they annexed some Greek culture. What did they think of the Persians? They actually called the Persians barbarians. The Persians. They destroyed the Celts, which were pretty peaceful. I mean, it's like when they, it's almost the ignorance of when you read, and I don't think she ever has, of the white racists in the South saying, look, we're helping the Negro, as they called it back then. We're helping the Negro. They couldn't function on their own. They weren't even civilized. We actually have them living in huts. Yeah, you have to beat them a couple times, but they're living better here than they were there, and they have a purpose in life, and they're part of civilization. They're part of making America great. And slavery is a true American institution. You can label anything good, but it doesn't mean I have to agree with that. When the Romans would destroy whole cultures and then say, oh, that was their altar to their god, okay, that's Jupiter. Or when Antiochus Epiphanes with his Hellenization said it's Zeus Hospitaller, Zeus the Hospitable is going to be on Mount Gerizim, and Zeus the Olympian is going to be on the Temple Mount, and Moses and all that's going away. Is that respecting other religions? Or is it basically saying, all your holy sites are now our holy sites, and we're naming them after our gods, and all this other stuff that you have that actually makes your culture you, we're throwing it away, but we're tolerant of your gods? No, it's stamping it as Roman. And basically saying, you want to worship God, you're worshiping the Roman God. And the gods had the heads of Roman emperors on them. Rome was tolerant of religion. 70 AD, the Bar Kokhba revolt, the expelling of the Jews of Carthage. Oh, Boudica in Britain with the Celts. It's using a caricature, part common knowledge, man. It was common knowledge, like stuff that just people saying like the Mayflower landed. Or Christopher Columbus on the Mayflower landed in Jamestown in 1776. It's common knowledge. Abraham Lincoln was the first president. Common knowledge. I mean, just the more basic errors to where you didn't read. I know you didn't read Tacitus. I know you didn't read Pliny because I've read that. You haven't read Galen. And this isn't some arrogant thing, because somebody else could come and just shoot me down if I'm lying. That's the great thing about being the discipline of history. It's not, oh, I have this, I have that. It's we can all read the same thing, especially in this day and age. Websites I give people. Look, you can read this stuff for free, and there's multiple different translators, and they're all scholars. That clearly didn't happen. Who preserved all the Greek writing that we have today, all the Roman writing that we have today? Of pagans preserved pagan writing. It was the church. And the East, the church preserved it until Islam rose up. But without the church, you have none of that. This is not Christian propaganda. This is just historical fact. Trying to argue against it like it's an ideological point is buffoonery. It's obnoxious. Probably the only place you can get away with this would be places like Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, where somebody calls himself a scholar. I mean, I have Chadwick's book, History of the Church Fathers, or something like that. What is it called? I just holding it up. If you read that, which they have, they teach college courses with that. If you read that, you're not a scholar. Go read the primary sources, and then the archaeological books, and other scholars like Baruch Halperin. You have to read multiple. Even if you're studying something like early Christianity, you have to read Celsus, Pliny, Tacitus. What do the historians say on that? Where are they biased? What are the ones that disagree with them on that? What about the Jewish view of this time? What does the Talmud say? What doesn't it say? You can't just read the blurbs about Christianity. You have to actually go through and read the stuff. You got to wade through a lot of boring stuff, and you're better for it. When people say, well, okay, prove to me Jesus existed. Do you know anything about the historical method? Well, no. Okay, then it's like walking into a lab. Prove to me that DNA exists. There's not one line. There's not a one-liner that you can throw out. You actually have to know basic chemistry and things like that, which most people don't know. Now, it's common knowledge and accepted because of DNA. But are people going to say DNA is a myth? There are certain historical standards and historical criteria. Bart Ehrman was shocked. Someone who I don't like. I think is far too much of a minimalist, and many other people view him as too much of a minimalist as well. Says it's inconceivable to me that somebody would think that Jesus didn't exist. And these are people, even atheists, that try to use that will almost in the same conversation talk about Occam's razor. Let me see. Someone claiming to be the Messiah gets crucified, and his body disappears. His followers go crazy and say that he rose from the dead, because messiahs aren't supposed to be crucified. They're supposed to not die, basically, until they've taken over all of Israel. And they were being martyred, and they had this weird type of ascetic religion, and history bears that out. You don't need a conspiracy theory or, oh, he didn't really exist. It's that thou dost protest too much. When people start going into that, it makes me think, you believe in God way more than I have ever in my life.